Entitlement reaches all walks of life, as you'll find out in this episode of Entitled People. Our first one is from Difficult Giraffe 490. I live in a big city. One of my mom's distant cousins who lives in a small town, 5 hours away, had some medical appointment in the city. I had never met this woman before, but my mom texted me asking if I would help her around while she was in town for the day. So I did. I picked her up from the train station, bought her lunch, drove her around sightseeing, and let her stay overnight at my house because her appointment was already late in the afternoon. The next day, I got her breakfast, drove her back to the station, and paid for her ticket home. Wasn't needed, but I wanted to be a good host. Some weeks later, the relative texted me while I was at work, saying she was in town again. I replied that I was busy this time and couldn't spend time with her, so have fun on her own. Few hours later, she texted again asking for the code into my house. I was thinking, what the fuck? Who said you could come over? I was busy anyway, so I ignored that text. Apparently she tried calling a couple times, but I missed them because my phone was on silent at work. She wasn't at my house after work, so I thought that was that. But the next day, this fucking woman texted me again, saying because I was not there to let her in, she had to order an Uber to a hotel, paid for the room, then Uber to the train station in the morning to go home. She sent me pictures of the receipts and asked me to reimburse her. What do you mean? I asked. She said since I was her family in town, it was expected that I took care of her, and that my mother would agree. It was so ridiculous, I was tempted to just ignore her entirely, but I also wanted to stop this from ever happening again. So I replied that I did not know her at all until last time, and that we did not have that kind of relationship. I was not obligated to do anything for her and owed her nothing, and that she should never show up at my house unannounced again. She said I was disrespectful and a shame to my parents. Sent the convo to my mom and said I never wanted to have anything to do with this relative again. Mom said to forgive her since she was not well off and might have really needed help. I said, not my problem. Talk about absolute entitlement. I totally get it's one thing to be a good host, but then when that person decides to show up unannounced and expects you to be that same good host after their already previously announced visit, it just speaks volumes on this kind of person. The entitled, obviously, not the OP. This next one is by Minky Mink. I have a very small ranch in California. I used to own a brush clearing business using goats. I haven't done that in years, but I still do have 2 elderly mini goats. Yesterday, I got an email from a friend who I've known since high school. We're both in our 60s now. She lives overseas and also has a massive house in Malibu with a lot of land. She comes from a family with a known name that was one of the wealthiest in California. She inherited millions. She's never for a minute lived without. The email let me know that she was in town to deal with her Malibu house as her land was damaged by our recent fires. She asked if I could bring my goats over to munch on the brush on her land. I haven't heard from her in over a year. No talk of pay, no explanation. The email was written as though she was doing me a friendly favor and it would be no big deal for me to haul 2 goats over to her place, spend a few days overseeing them eating, hauling them back and forth at night, as a favor, for free. I explained that my goats were old and that I didn't do that anymore, that the work involved with doing something like this was pretty extensive. No apologies were forthcoming. Instead, she was miffed and wanted to know if I knew anyone else who would do that for her, undoubtedly for free. I told her I did not know anyone with goats. I do, but I'll be damned if I'm going to subject them to this entitled woman. She abruptly said, "Thanks," and that was it. No, let's get together, I'm in town. No, it would be nice to see you. Just let me use your goats for free, and why won't you do that for me? This same woman, some years ago, descended on a mutual close friend who was dying. She insisted on staying at the dying friend's house, taking up all of the woman and her family's time, energy, and resources, to the point she had to be asked to leave because she was imposing so much. At that time, I had to cancel my long-planned and paid-for trip to see my very close friend before she died because this woman drained all of her energy. My best friend died without seeing me because of this woman and her entitlement. At the funeral, only my dead friend's family were supposed to speak, but the Malibu woman had written a 3-page speech that she thought she was going to give because she considers herself family. When she got up there and tried to head up to the front of the church to speak, my dead friend's brother finally had enough. He stood up, grabbed this woman by the arm, and forcefully dragged her back to her seat. He was furious. I suppose it shouldn't be a surprise, but the sheer entitlement of some people who were born into money never fails to shock me. The sad thing is, I kind of can't agree with that last statement. A lot of people that are born into money that have never had to want, they lack the respect of a lot of people. They feel like they're above everybody else, and then the entitlement is just absolutely ridiculous. I've been poor my whole life, but I know if I'm ever fortunate enough to get into a really good financial position, the values and morals that I have would definitely remain. It's just sad to see how entitled some people can be. And our final one is from, seriously, this shit? One early spring, I decided to sell our travel trailer. It was only a few years old, looked new inside and out, priced right, and it was prime time of the year to sell. I knew it would be gone after a showing or two. The first family shows up after an odd phone call. The wife does all the talking, but made it clear that her husband, Glenn, makes the decisions in the family. She asks a ton of questions on the phone so she could give the info to Glenn. Glenn is in the room with her as this is going on. Weird, but whatever. They roll in and I meet Glenn. He tries to avoid eye contact and is trying to play a power game. The wife and kids are in love with the camper, polite and friendly. Glenn is a dick. As I answer his questions, he occasionally smirks. At this point, I'm not interested in selling him dog shit fresh from my backyard, but I'm not lowering myself to this behavior. I gave him the respect he does not deserve, taking the high road, since his poor wife and kids don't need to see me telling him to get the fuck out. Eventually, Glenn says,
I'm going to be giving you this much money. We will be back next weekend with the check.
He barks at his wife and kids to get back in the car. I tell him that I did not agree to any price. Maybe it will still be around next weekend, maybe not. He smirks again and drives away. Glenn's price was exactly what I would have accepted from any potential buyer who was not a dick. At that point, I was clear about one thing. Glenn will never end up with my camper because, well, you know. The next day, a couple shows up to look at the trailer. They are slack-jawed at the price and condition and ask what I will take for it, as they can meet me later in the day. With cash? I offer to sell it to them for Glenn's price. A few hours later, I have a fat stack of $100 bills in hand, and they leave with the trailer, thrilled with the deal. The next Friday, just as I expected, Glenn's abused wife calls. She tells me that they got a loan and want to pick up the trailer tomorrow. I play dumb and ask what she means. After she explains it again, I drop a bomb. So sorry, but it's gone. I tell her that all Glenn had to do was respectfully offer the amount he told me I would be taking, and then leave a deposit check, and then you would be picking up your camper tomorrow. I reminded her that she was standing there when I told Glenn that we have not agreed to a price, and that it was still very much for sale to whomever wanted it. Finally, I told her to make sure that Glenn knows that it sold for his price the next day. So sad. It seems that Glenn was a dick who got the dick on this one. You know, that's the thing that I really roll with. The whole bullshit that everybody wants to spew out of their fucking mouths like they're hardcore fucking humans. Respect has to be earned. No, you show respect first until somebody disrespects you, then that respect has to be earned. But a lot of people miss that, and you wonder why there's a lot of disrespectful dicks running around on the planet. Alright, that's enough entitlement for the day. Well, that wraps up this episode of Entitled People. If you liked the video, please drop a like, share my content on all of your social media, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to hit that bell so you're notified every time I upload. and drop a comment down below. It really helps with the algorithm and helps new people find my channel. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my patrons and super thanks contributors. Have a great day and stay safe out there.